There are relationships that don't begin with promises, but with an invisible pull so powerful it makes you believe it is destiny. But the truth is deeper, darker, and far more merciless. You did not enter the narcissist's life through love. You entered through a psychological contract that was signed long before you even knew what love was. This contract does not exist on paper, but in the unconscious, where wounds, orphaned memories, and the buried cries of childhood continue to quietly shape your present choices. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And indeed, the meeting between an empath and a narcissist is never random. It is the collision of two halves of the soul moving in opposite directions, one carrying light, searching for a place to shine, the other carrying darkness, searching for a place to hide. The empath thinks they are falling in love, but beneath that, they are trying to heal something within themselves, something the narcissist unconsciously senses, attaches to, and exploits. And the narcissist? They did not find you. They found a living mirror, a fertile ground, where their emptiness could borrow warmth, borrow existence, borrow an identity. And so the contract forms. You will give light, they will drain it. You will heal, they will destroy. You will try to understand them, and they will try to keep you trapped in a spiral with no exit. You mistake this for a special relationship, when in reality it is simply the echo of an old wound repeating itself under the disguise of destined love. What you call love is, in truth, the grasping of the unhealed parts within you. What they call love is merely a desperate need to be filled. And the moment you realize this, you begin to break the contract you never knew you had signed. But before you break it, before awakening happens, you must look directly at the greatest question of all. Why did your soul agree to enter their darkness in the first place? Chapter 1. The origin of the contract, the wounds that chose on your behalf. Long before you understood what love was, long before your heart knew how to beat for someone, your nervous system had already quietly memorized the earliest templates of love, closeness, safety, and threat. These templates were not formed from the stories you were taught, but from what you lacked, what you endured, what you swallowed in silence. The child within you signed the first signature of the contract with the narcissist long before you ever met them. Carl Jung called this the unconscious pact of the shadow, the force that pulls a person toward what they have not yet faced, as a way of completing what is unfinished within the soul. You did not choose the narcissist. Your wounds chose them. That wound might be the belief that you must perform perfectly to be loved. It might be the familiarity of unpredictability, emotional coldness, or inconsistency, because that was what you once called relationship in your earliest years. It might be the fear of abandonment that makes you cling to anyone who gives you even a momentary sense of being special. Or deeper still, it might be the quiet emptiness you've learned to live with, an emptiness that unconsciously seeks someone whose darkness mirrors your own, hoping that this time he will save them instead of being left behind. In Jungian terms, this is known as repetition compulsion, the unconscious reenactment of old wounds in the present. Not because you are weak, but because your soul longs to heal, to complete what could not be completed in the past. But the narcissist is not a mirror for healing. They are a mirror of shadow, reflecting the parts of yourself you have not yet been willing to see. When they appear, something unusual happens. They sense the emptiness you hide, and you sense the woundedness they conceal. This is not a meeting of two souls, but a meeting of two shadows, your shadow that seeks healing, and their shadow that seeks escape. And thus, the contract begins to operate. You come in believing love can heal everything. They come in believing someone else can carry their emptiness for them. You trust in the power of light. They trust in their ability to feed off that light to survive. Each enters with a different expectation, yet those expectations lock together like opposite poles of a magnet. What makes this encounter feel irresistible is the unconscious memory inside you. Your nervous system recognizes something familiar in them, not the familiarity of healthy love, but the familiarity of relationships where you once fought to be seen, to be loved, to be acknowledged. This familiarity tricks you into believing this is the right person, when in truth it is only the right shadow. You are drawn to them not because they are your destiny, but because they fit perfectly into the old emotional architecture that you have not yet dismantled. And in those early moments, the narcissist senses something they will never admit. You have the capacity to fill their emptiness. You become what they cannot self-generate: reflection, validation, life. The narcissist does not choose you with their heart. They choose you with their wound. A wound similar to yours in its hunger, but different in its response. You want to heal, they want to hide. And so the contract was signed long ago. You signed with hope, they signed with darkness. You signed with the desire to mend, they signed with the fear of being exposed. You signed with compassion, they signed with emptiness. And from that moment on, the painful journey begins, not because you were naive, but because your soul was seeking itself along a misguided path. This is not your fault, it is the invitation of the unconscious, and you were never taught how to refuse it. Chapter 2, the narcissist's signature, what they bring into the contract. When a narcissist enters your life, they do not arrive with a heart, they arrive with a void. This void is not ordinary emptiness, but an inner black hole, where every emotion, every reflection, every affirmation is swallowed without ever feeling enough. This is the offering they bring into the contract. Their emptiness demands your light as its lifeline, and they sign with that need. At a deep unconscious level, the narcissist knows something they will never articulate. They cannot exist without someone reflecting back the image they wish to believe about themselves. They do not love you. They love how your presence allows them to escape the truth of who they really are. That is the most powerful yet invisible signature they place on the contract. Carl Jung described the narcissistic ego as a structure cut off from the soul, a dazzling but hollow shell. That shell is the persona, while the buried part is the shadow, the place where primitive shame, worthlessness, fear of exposure, and the terror of abandonment reside. When they approach you, they present their polished persona, charming, profound, gifted, special. But what they actually bring is the trembling darkness beneath the part they pray you will never see. And tragically, because you have the light of empathy, you become the first person who does see it. The narcissist does not sign the contract with commitment, responsibility, or sincerity. They sign with projection by unloading the ugliest parts of themselves onto you. If they feel small, they make you feel wrong. If they feel ashamed, they make you explain yourself. If they feel worthless, they manipulate you into proving your love. In their unconscious, you are not a person. You are a container, a vessel for their shadow, the place where they can dump the chaos they refuse to confront. The irony is that they bring into the contract their own fragmentation, psychological pieces that were split off long ago. The abandonment terror they deny, the emotional dependency they suppress, the instability they refuse to acknowledge. They enter your life not as a whole adult, but as a child trapped in pain that was never soothed. But instead of healing, they have learned to survive by feeding on others. And you, with your sensitivity, intuition, and ability to feel the emotional undercurrents others miss, become the perfect target. Your presence is a painkiller to them. But like all addictions, one dose is never enough. The narcissist does not seek love, they seek supply, a constant flow of attention, validation, and reflection that you generate effortlessly. You think you were chosen because you are special, but the truth is more painful. You were chosen because you were exploitable in exactly the way they needed. The narcissist cannot love, but they can sense where the brightest light resides, because that is where their survival depends. The signature they place beneath this invisible contract is an unspoken promise. I will give you the best version of me as long as you agree to carry the darkest part of me. And because you cannot see that darkness at the beginning, you step into the relationship believing you have met a beautiful soul. But in reality, you have met a shattered soul wrapped in glittering paper. When that paper falls away, the contract finally reveals itself. The narcissist enters your life with one certainty: they will take more than they give. They will take your softness and offer chaos. They will take your forgiveness and repeat the wound. They will take your understanding and respond with coldness. Not because they are deliberately cruel, but because their psychology was never built to love, only to survive by extracting life from others. That is the signature they inscribe onto this unconscious contract. You will become their shelter, and they will become the place where you break. Chapter 3. The Invisible Terms. What you actually agreed to. No one enters a relationship able to read the hidden terms behind the smile, behind the charm, behind the intoxicating whispers. But with a narcissist, those terms always exist. You simply cannot see them at the moment your heart is the most open. And it is not because you lacked awareness, but because those terms were written in the language of the unconscious, written in wounds you have never touched, written in your deepest need to feel loved, seen, and enough. You agreed not with logic, but with the cry of your soul. The first invisible term you unconsciously accepted is that you would become the place where they unload their darkness. When the narcissist feels small, insecure, or ashamed, they do not face it. They push it onto you, and you, with your empathic heart, mistakenly believe it is your responsibility to make them feel safe, valued, loved. You do not realize that the moment you attempt to heal what never belonged to you, the contract assigns you a role. You are a container, not a beloved. The second term is that you will do their emotional labor for them. You will analyze, understand, explain, soothe, forgive, repeat, try harder, and remain patient. You will blame yourself when they are wrong, shrink yourself when they explode, diminish your needs to maintain peace. Without noticing, each time you soften, you are unconsciously agreeing to the clause: I will carry the weight of your psyche on my shoulders. The third term, the most painful, is that you will sacrifice yourself to preserve their most beautiful version. The narcissist shows you their best half: passionate, romantic, profound, exceptional. But that is merely the persona, the mask. Your unconscious believes that if you love enough, wait enough, sacrifice enough, that persona will someday become their real self. And so you agree to give pieces of yourself in exchange for the rare moments when they temporarily return to that beautiful version. But what you do not know is that this term has no end point. The more you give, the more they take. The more you sacrifice, the farther they retreat. The more you prove your love, the more they deny it. The fourth term is that you will become the energy source they cannot generate themselves. Your light becomes their oxygen, your trust becomes their nourishment, your heartbreak becomes proof that they matter. Your exhaustion becomes evidence that you have carried too much, yet they treat it as normal. This is the clause that traps you the longest, because you do not recognize that you are living in transmit mode, while they live in absorb mode endlessly. The fifth term, you will accept their contradictions as part of love. Sweet one moment, silent the next, lifting you up to the sky, then throwing you into the abyss, saying they love you, then disappearing. You think this is emotional complexity, but in truth, it is their survival strategy. Their inconsistency is a hidden clause. You must learn to live with disappointment. And your unconscious agrees because that disappointment resembles something you once experienced long ago, something that felt like love when you were small. The sixth term, the most dangerous, is that you will forget yourself first. You will stop asking, what do I need, and replace it with how do I keep them from leaving. You will stop protecting yourself and begin to self-blame. You will silence your inner voice and replace it with theirs, with fear, with old memories. But this term is never written out loud. It is carried out in silence, in slow erosion, in that moment when you realize you have lost yourself without knowing when it happened. And finally, the largest clause in this invisible contract: you will always be the one who loses the most. Not because you are weak, but because you are the only one who brought a real heart into the game. You are the only one who speaks truthfully, loves genuinely, hurts authentically. They do not. Your love is real, but the contract is not. The issue is not that you agreed. The issue is that you did not know you had agreed. But recognizing these terms is the beginning of freedom. Once you name them, they lose their power. And when you face the truth, the contract begins to crack. Chapter 4. Why can't you leave? Destiny's thread, or the loop of the unconscious. No one stays with a narcissist because they are weak. No one endures coldness, silence, inconsistency, or manipulation because they lack knowledge. You stay not because you have no choice. You stay because your nervous system believes this chaos is love. And that is the deepest tragedy of the invisible contract between you and them. You confuse pain with familiarity, wounds with connection, the trauma loop with soul destiny. Jung once said, "We are not bound by what we love, but by what we have not healed." And that is the answer to the question, why can't you leave? The truth is, you are not bound to them. You are bound to the part of yourself that has not yet been freed. Your attachment does not come from the person in front of you, but from an older memory, a feeling long familiar to you. The feeling of trying to be loved, trying not to be abandoned, trying to be enough. Your nervous system reads their chaos as familiar, as something that existed in your early life. It is this familiarity that creates the illusion of destiny. You think you are drawn to them because your souls recognize each other. But what is actually happening is this: your wound recognizes theirs. When the narcissist withdraws, goes silent, turns cold, or emotionally punishes you, your body does not react like an adult being treated poorly. It reacts like a child who was once left alone. You are not hurting because they are gone. You are hurting because a part of you that was never held is being awakened again. This is the mechanism that keeps you from leaving. In the unconscious, you are not just losing them. You are losing, once again, something taken from you in childhood. And so you cling to them as if you are clinging to your last chance to heal an old wound. But this is the trap of the unconscious loop. You are trying to heal your shadow through someone who lives inside their own shadow. The narcissist unconsciously understands this. They sense that their withdrawal triggers your deepest fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of being replaced, fear of being forgotten. Each time they pull you close, then push you away, they are not just manipulating you. They are activating your survival system. You call it intense love, but your body is experiencing a trauma bond, attachment built on loss, fused with unpredictable rewards. Your brain remembers the sweet moments more than the cruel ones, because the sweetness is rare, dramatic, and feels like a promise that this time will be different. But nothing is different. The only thing changing is that each day you lose another piece of yourself. Jung said that people repeat old patterns until they finally see them. But before you see the pattern, you will believe you are living a special love story. You will believe the pain proves the depth of your love. You will believe you stay because you are loyal, strong, healing. But the truth is, you stay because you are afraid to leave, afraid to face the emptiness this relationship has been covering, afraid to walk alone again, afraid to admit that you loved the wrong soul. But deeper than all of that, you are afraid that if you leave, you will have to face the truth you have always avoided. that you deserve a love that does not require suffering. The thread between you and them is not destiny. It is an unhealed wound trying to heal itself through someone who never intended to heal. The narcissist is not your soulmate. They are your shadowmate, the one who represents the part of your darkness you have not yet faced. And the moment you recognize this, the contract begins to lose its power, because anything seen in the light of awareness can no longer bind you. Chapter 5. When you begin to break the contract, the narcissist's collapse and your awakening. The process of breaking the invisible contract with the narcissist does not begin with a clear decision. It begins with a very small moment that is powerful enough to change the flow of your unconscious. The moment you notice the repetition. The moment you feel more tired than in love. The moment you realize that your peace is always being traded for their outbursts. The moment you look in the mirror and see your own eyes starting to resemble the person you swore you would never become, that is when the contract begins to tear. It is not because you suddenly become stronger, but because you begin to wake up. You wake up from the trance they created with chaos laced with a few seconds of sweetness. You wake up from the illusion that sacrifice will make them change. You wake up from the belief that you need them in order to feel valuable. And every time you recognize a new truth, another strand in the contract snaps a little more. But for the narcissist, your awakening is their greatest nightmare. Because within this contract, they have always held the upper position, the one who controls emotions, the one who sets the distance, the one who defines what is right and wrong. When you begin to see the pattern, you take that control back. And the first thing the narcissist feels is not the loss of you, but the loss of supply, the loss of the ability to define themselves through you, the loss of the mirror they used to gaze at a beautiful version of themselves that they cannot generate from within. Their collapse begins in silence. No noise, no theatrics, no crying. It is an internal collapse when they realize that for the first time, you are no longer reacting according to the old script. You no longer panic when they leave. You no longer scramble when they go silent. You no longer wobble when they criticize you. You are no longer confused when they lie. And what terrifies them most is this. You are beginning to be at peace. Your peace, to a narcissist, is a threat. It strips them of power. It exposes a truth they cannot face, that they never controlled you through strength, but through the fear you carried in your own mind. When that fear dissolves, their power disappears with it, and in that exact moment, the invisible contract that has imprisoned you begins to burn from the inside out. But this breaking does not only change you, it reveals who they really are. When the narcissist feels their supply slipping away, they reveal 3 distinct layers of reaction. The first is reseduction. They return with sweet words, old kisses, gestures of care they never truly possessed. If that does not work, they move to blame, forcing you to feel guilty for daring to stand up for yourself. And when that no longer works either, they enter the final layer, desperate rage. Not rage because they lost you, but because they lost the ability to keep you dependent. Meanwhile, your awakening unfolds like a rebirth. You realize that you can live without being seen by them. You can love without trading away your peace. You can exist without anyone having to confirm your worth. And the strange thing is this. When you begin to love yourself, you look back at them and see that they are much smaller than the powerful image they once built in your mind. The contract only has power when you do not know it exists, when you name it, when you see its structure, when you understand the motives beneath their mask. That contract loses its validity. And the painful yet beautiful truth is, you do not need to shout, you do not need to prove anything, you do not need to fight your way out. You only need to wake up. Waking up is enough. Leaving does not truly begin with your feet. It begins with awareness. The moment you see that they are not a destined love, but a lesson in darkness, in that moment your soul has already taken a step ahead. The rest is just your body catching up. Chapter 6. The void they must face when you detach. The rising darkness and the panic of narcissistic collapse. When you detach from the narcissist, they do not lose you, they lose themselves. The most painful yet profound reality of this invisible contract is that you were never just a lover, a spouse, or a companion. You were their mirror of existence, the place where they could see a beautiful version of themselves that they could not create on their own. You were the source of energy that allowed them to escape their inner emptiness. So when you leave, they do not simply lose someone to love, they lose their hiding place from themselves. That emptiness is not the absence of you. It is the return of the darkness they have suppressed their entire life. Once you step out of the game, there is no one left for them to project onto, no one left to blame, no one left to manipulate. The only thing that remains is a version of themselves they cannot bear. Their own shadow, chaotic, ashamed, worthless, afraid, and so empty it feels like a bottomless abyss. With you gone, they are forced to confront the truth they hid behind carefully crafted lies, that the love they gave you only existed as long as you played the role of healer, that the initial sweetness was nothing but a mask, that all their confidence, power, and charisma depended on you reflecting them. And when the mirror disappears, their mask falls straight onto the cold stone floor of reality. This creates a narcissistic collapse, an ego collapse, Jung described as an earthquake in the unconscious. It is the moment when the persona crumbles, the shadow surges up, and the split soul is forced to face the very place it has always fled. Not everyone witnesses this moment, because it happens in the darkness of their inner world, where they let no one enter. But there are 3 signs that show this collapse is underway. The first sign, panic in silence. They do not speak, do not apologize, do not explain. But inside, their body sinks into a state of turmoil, as if they have lost their source of oxygen. You were that oxygen. They never learned to breathe on their own. When you leave, they suffocate. This panic is not because they love you, but because they do not know how to live without a place to deposit their darkness. The second sign, desperately seeking new supply. They do not look for someone else because they have forgotten you, but precisely because they cannot forget you. They search for someone who can replace the role you once played, the one who carries their emotions, reflects their worth, and endures their chaos. But any new person is only a temporary copy, and that constant comparison makes them increasingly aware that what they lost was not just a person, but an emotional system that only you could provide. This creates an addictive loop. The more new supply they get, the more panicked they become, because the old supply cannot be replaced. The third sign, the darkness spilling over the surface. This is the most dangerous stage for them, and also the stage in which you are most vulnerable to being pulled back in. When the shadow rises, they drown in a primal shame, the very thing Freud and Jung both described as the fear of being seen as they truly are. With no one left to shield them, the truth they hate most shines directly into their face. They do not know how to love, how to keep, how to build. They only know how to take and destroy. This act of seeing themselves causes them such pain that they would rather return to hurting you than endure this inner shame. And in the midst of this collapse, they confront the void you once filled, a void so vast it makes them feel as if their soul is falling with no end. They panic, they rage, they cling, they rewrite the story to make you the villain. They do anything to keep running from the shadow, but this time there is no one left to absorb it. The darkness returns to the only place it belongs, within them. Meanwhile, you, the one who was once drained, begin to feel lighter. Not because you are fully healed yet, but because the burden is no longer on your shoulders. And the strangest, most beautiful part is this, that lightness does not make you arrogant. It makes you clear-sighted. And when you look at them from a distance, no longer entangled, you see a truth your hopeful heart could not bear to see before. They were never the person you were meant to save. They were the lesson that taught you how to save yourself. And when you truly understand this, the invisible contract, the one that kept you locked inside an emotional loop for years, officially dissolves. Chapter 7. Re-signing the contract with yourself, the empath's return, and the soul's maturation. When the invisible contract between you and the narcissist dissolves, the first thing you feel is not victory but emptiness. This is the stage where many empaths mistakenly believe they are returning to an old wound. But in truth, it is a sign of detachment. You are stepping out of the role you unconsciously played for so long, the healer, the absorber, the sacrificer, the one who carries someone else's chaos. And when you no longer carry that weight, your nervous system becomes confused. It believes you are losing something important, but in reality, you are reclaiming yourself. This return does not happen amid applause. It happens in silence, where you begin observing your pain without running from it, where you recognize that peace does not come from keeping them, but from never losing yourself again. Jung calls this individuation the process through which the soul becomes itself, no longer controlled by darkness or unconscious patterns. This is the moment you re-sign a new contract, a contract with your own soul. The first clause of this new contract is that you will no longer save others at the cost of losing yourself. You realize that compassion is not about reaching into someone else's abyss, but about keeping your own light strong enough for others to see the path if they choose to. And if they do not choose to, you are no longer responsible for drowning with them. This is the empath's first true freedom, understanding that love is not unconditional sacrifice, but sovereign boundaries. The second clause, you will not beg for love through endurance. You have grown accustomed to proving your worth through patience, sacrifice, and enduring someone else's emotional storms. But now, you see a greater truth. Real love never requires you to destroy yourself. Real love does not demand self-erasure. And in the moment you understand this, your heart no longer trembles before those who only know how to take but not give. The third clause, you will see another's darkness without carrying it. This is the empath's highest form of maturity. In the past, whenever you saw someone's pain, you believed you had to save them, heal them, rescue them from it. But now, you realize that seeing does not mean absorbing. You can empathize without dissolving. You can feel without being pulled in. You can love without being consumed. This is sovereign empathy, compassion with boundaries. The fourth clause, you become the father or mother your inner child once needed. You recognize that the wound that drew you into the narcissist's orbit did not come from them. It came from the child within you, the child who was once abandoned, unseen, unloved in the way they needed. And now, instead of seeking salvation outside, you turn inward. You hold that child, protect them, comfort them, nurture them. This is the moment the old contract dies completely, and the new contract between you and yourself is signed with profound gentleness. The final clause of the new contract, you move through life as a soul that no longer needs to merge with someone else's darkness. Chaos no longer attracts you. Pain no longer feels like destiny. Instability no longer masquerades as passion. You see the warning signs you once ignored. You walk away before the damage begins. You guard your peace as your most sacred possession. And it is precisely then that something miraculous happens. You are no longer drawn to narcissists because you have already healed the part of you that once responded to them.